Night in this city is unlike night anywhere else in the world. For this is Berlin in the fall of 1961, and in the shadows, history waits.
On August 13, 1961, the Berlin Wall was erected in the midst of the Cold War. Complete with 87 miles of concrete, barbed wire, and armed guards, the Berlin Wall separated East Berlin from West Berlin. Later, the fall of the Berlin Wall impacted millions around the world and earned the Berlin Wall a place in history textbooks for years to come. The fall of the Berlin Wall, the final crack in a crumbling barrier. Although the Berlin Wall physically extended through a single city, its destruction broke numerous barriers worldwide. The fall of the Berlin Wall not only ended the physical separation of Germany, but also signified the political collapse of the Soviet Union, ended the former Eastern German economy, and broke long-withstanding ideological beliefs of communist superiority. The end of the Second World War brought incredible political tension between the two superpowers of the world at the time, the United States and the Soviet Union. The clear yet restricted conflict soon became known as the Cold War. Because both sides of the conflict possessed weapons capable of killing millions in seconds, the Cold War was mainly fought through political and ideological fronts. The Soviet Union strived to maintain control of Eastern Europe and spread communism worldwide, while the United States fought to prevent the spread of communism through containment. In the 1940s, Germany became a hotspot of political conflict as it was divided among the four major winners of World War II: France, Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union. France, Britain, and the United States combined their portions to form the Federal Republic of Germany, and the Soviet portion became known as the German Democratic Republic. Similarly, Germany's capital, Berlin, was divided into Democratic West Berlin and Socialist East Berlin. In the words of Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev, the prosperous capital city within communist East Germany stuck like a bone in the Soviet throat. The United States also saw West Berlin as an opportunity to display capitalist superiority and ensured that West Berlin flourished with plentiful goods and services. Many East Berliners soon began to migrate to West Berlin in search of a better quality of life. As thousands of well-educated and younger East Berliners began to flee to West Berlin, the government of East Germany and the Soviet Union ordered the construction of the Berlin Wall under the false pretense of keeping Western fascists and spies out of East Berlin. In reality, the wall was erected to prevent the flow of East Berliners escaping to West Berlin. The barrier was first implemented as a mere barbed wire fence in 1961. In the early stages of the wall, many people continued to flee to West Berlin, but as the wall expanded, it became much more difficult. In just a few years, the wall had become over 100 kilometers long and over 3 meters high. Nicknamed the Iron Curtain of Europe, the seemingly unpassable Berlin Wall prevented thousands from leaving East Germany as a whole. While it is estimated that over 5,000 East Berliners succeeded in covertly crossing the border while the wall stood, many were not as successful. One of those lives lost at the Berlin Wall belonged to Peter Fechter. Peter Fechter was a young man living in East Berlin. He died on August 17, 1962, at the age of 18 while attempting to cross the wall near Checkpoint Charlie. Peter was shot by a Stasi border guard and became fatally wounded. Even as Peter desperately cried for help after being shot, no one dared to assist him, and he died a slow and painful death. The only action occurred after Peter's death, when guards removed Peter's lifeless body from the border. Unfortunately, Peter's death was not the only one. Overall, at least 171 people were killed by border guards while attempting to cross the Berlin Wall, while thousands more were affected by the physical separation. The existence of the Berlin Wall brought pain and suffering to many throughout the late 1900s. It became a vivid symbol of hate, division, and oppression that separated families and friends.
Freedom has many difficulties, but we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in.
In his speech in 1963, President Kennedy empathized with the struggle being faced in Berlin and showed the United States support. In another speech in 1987, Ronald Reagan addressed the lack of freedom in East Germany and the injustice stemming from the Berlin Wall.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Citizens also began to show their disapproval for the Berlin Wall. On November 4, 1989, over 500,000 citizens gathered in East Berlin in a mass protest. 5 days later, their efforts took effect. In a fumbled press conference on November 9, 1989, German socialist official Günther Schabowski announced that East Berliners could now freely travel to West Berlin. When asked when this would be implemented, Schabowski said,
"As I understand it, it goes into effect immediately."
However, the new travel regulations were really to begin the following day. In addition to this, Schabowski failed to clarify the remaining rules and regulations, and soon it was reported that the border had officially opened.
The Iron Curtain between East Germany and West Berlin has come tumbling down. East Germany announced today it is opening its borders, allowing its citizens to go anywhere they wish. The future of the Berlin Wall is now up in the air.
On November 9, 1989, thousands of East Berliners overwhelmed Stasi border guards and crossed the border into West Berlin.
Meine Mutter und mein Vater sind da drüben. Kann ich jetzt rübergehen und meine Eltern besuchen gehen, ja? Ja.
What do you think of tonight?
It's wonderful.
Crazy.
Super.
Unreal. It's unbelievable.
Thousands of Berliners, both east and west, crowded at the wall to celebrate and rejoice in its fall. Many crossed the border while others celebrated and grabbed nearby tools to begin chipping away at the wall itself. While it stood, the seemingly impenetrable Berlin Wall symbolized the lack of freedom under communism. Later, its fall became a symbol of the reunification of Germany and symbolized the end of communism in Eastern Europe and the end of the Cold War itself. The fall of the Berlin Wall broke numerous political barriers by triggering the dissolution of the Soviet Union and accelerating the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe. Additionally, the fall of the Berlin Wall ultimately marked the end of the Cold War and allowed for the reunification of Germany. For years, Eastern Europe was under communist control. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Communist Party's control began weakening. The first to vote out their communist governments were Yugoslavia and Albania. Later, more and more countries followed, and in December of 1991, the Soviet Union itself was voted out of existence. The fall of the wall signified the preferential choice of many to live under capitalism rather than communism. In this blatant display of communist inferiority, the fall of the Berlin Wall triggered a domino effect that eventually became the downfall of classic communism. Politically, the fall of the Berlin Wall was the final crack in a crumbling dam that caused a flood of anti-communist thinking in Eastern Europe. In addition to the major political fallout, the economy was affected hugely after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the following reunification of Germany. After World War II, the German economy was struggling enormously. When Germany was divided, the economies of West Germany and East Germany differed greatly. West Germany flourished economically and even experienced industrial growth. This was due to the thousands of American soldiers in West Germany and the introduction of Deutsche Mark. However, East Germany was still struggling economically, and many citizens were unhappy with the economic policies put in place. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, the reunification of Germany followed soon after. West Germany had to assist East Germany through means such as providing jobs and raising taxes to stabilize the economy. Even today, there is a lasting difference between the economy in East and West Germany. Other countries around the world were also affected due to the fall of communism and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Ideologically, millions were affected by the fall of the Berlin Wall. It served to shine a light on the downfalls of communism while highlighting capitalist successes. As the Cold War was largely an ideological conflict, the Berlin Wall played a large role in shaping many opinions and views regarding the war and its victor. The fall of the Berlin Wall was extremely beneficial to the United States as it promoted their ideology while severely limiting the Soviet Union's. The Berlin Wall symbolized an ongoing conflict of wills and ideologies. 30 years ago, Germany was reunited, and still today the process of healing continues. Although the Berlin Wall fell long ago, its effects still heavily impact opinions today. People's outlooks on both capitalism and communism today can be accredited to much of what happened during the Cold War. Ultimately, when the Berlin Wall physically fell, it simultaneously broke numerous political, economical, and ideological barriers. Its fall led to the dissolution of the Soviet Union, put an end to communist superiority in Eastern Europe, and ended the Cold War. One of the most consequential events of the 20th century, the fall of the Iron Curtain, became a turning point in world history, entirely changing the face of world politics and reshaping the modern world for good.